And es- and especially perfect timing, especially as we come into a new year, look back at the old year and come into a new year, hoping, as Ramona said right from the outset here, that this be a year of transformation. And so we pray. Dear Creator, help me to see that in the midst of hate, I find within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I find within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I find within me an invincible calm. And I realize that through it all, that in the midst of winter, I find there is within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there is something stronger, something better, pushing right back. And so, as we start this new year, as we come together for our first Delegates Council of January of 2026, may we, as the Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition of Cincinnati, all of us as judicatories that are members of this coalition, and all of us as individuals, that we also may find that calm, that smile, and that love within all of us as individuals and as communities, no matter what we come across. And we ask all this in the name of our Creator, of our God. Amen.
Thank you, Danny. We will now do our roll call of judicatories and visitors. Are you ready, Holly?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. American Baptist Church USA, Miami Association.
Here, I'm trying to get my video to work, but I can certainly hear you.
Archdiocese of Cincinnati.
Lee Wilson.
Bernie Young here.
Lee Wilson.
Andrew Musgrave.
Cincinnati Islamic Community Center.
Hold on just a second. So I have Bernie Young, Bob Ursum, Lee Wilson, Andrew Musgrave, and Mary Partee.
Yes.
Is there anyone else from the Archdiocese? Okay, thanks.
Cincinnati Islamic Community Center.
Tyrone Jackson here.
Diocese of Southern Ohio Episcopal Church.
Elizabeth Brown.
Disciples of Christ, Southwest Ohio.
Cheryl Coggins.
Jewish Community Relation Councils of the Jewish Federation. Great Miami River District, United Methodist Church.
Jan Seymour.
Rhonda Deal.
Dwayne Gordon.
Religious Society of Friends.
JP Lund.
Carol Burks.
Nan Hatch and Doug Burks. Unitarian Universalist Council of Greater Cincinnati.
Carol Womeldorf.
Ramona Beck.
Pete Asman.
United Church of Christ of Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky.
Jonathan Bradner. Present.
David Maley.
Oh, did someone else say something after Jonathan?
Two more Unitarian Universalists, Carol and Dick Fensel.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Dave Maley for UCC.
Oh, thank you. Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Other guest, if you would give us your name and your denomination or organization. So visitors and guests.
This is Jim Burridge, Catholic, Immaculate Heart of Mary Church.
Hi, I'm Amara Elowen, a Unitarian Universalist from St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church.
Ellie Wilmuth from the Milwaukee suburbs, just watching and learning. Also related to Holly.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Danny, do you want to share the minutes briefly?
First, I'll just share. Oh,
The
yeah,
agenda?
share the agenda.
We can do them in any order.
Okay, great. So,
This is our agenda for today. So our typical opening and welcome.
yep.
Our main speaker, and we're going to do updates from the executive director at the end. So we're doing flipping our normal schedule for our agenda a little bit today. Michael has a early afternoon appointment, and so we want to start off with him so that we have plenty of time for his presentation. Are there any additions or changes to our agenda? Hearing none, our agenda stands approved.
And then here we've got the minutes from our last Delegates Council meeting. And so these are somewhat lengthy. It was a really rich panel discussion last time. So again, it is there in the chat if you'd like to download it. Please do. Please read through it. And then it would be my proposal, pending Doug's approval and everyone's approval, that we actually do a formal approval of these minutes at our February annual meeting so that folks actually have a chance to look at them. Unless, Doug, you want to ask folks to approve it today, that's fine too.
No, I think that proposal resonates with me. We had four very exceptional presenters, and the panel discussion was very rich. If you were unable to attend, looking over the minutes, I think will be very valuable. It had lots of information on housing. And so with that, I ask that delegates approve bringing forth our minutes to be approved at our annual meeting in February. Is there anyone who is opposed or wants to abstain? Hearing none, the proposal is approved.
Yeah, I don't see them in the chat.
They should be all the way up at the top. Do other folks see them?
You only see them if you joined after you downloaded them. Before you, if you were on the Ming when you added it, they can see it. I can't see it because I joined a little late.
Okay, well, I will do that then.
If you just reload it, then everybody will be able to see it.
I will do that. And then, Doug, if you want to proceed, I will. I'll do those documents while you continue.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Carol.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that draws me to Mark is being able to work with, share learned experiences, with others who share the values that Mark has and our desire to transform our world. And today we have a powerful speaker in person who has contributed much to our community and to our world. Our speaker today is Michael Sickles, who has dedicated his professional life to advocating and counseling youth. Currently, he serves as the Youth Advocacy Manager at Back2Back Ministries. His work centers on empowering at-risk youth aged 16 to 18 through mentorship, financial coaching, and the creation of college and career pathways. He has worked at Princeton High School, North College Hill City Schools, and CPST as a caseworker at the Children's Home of Cincinnati. His work has had a real impact within our community. He has much to share with us to challenge us as we work together. As Back2Back says, to work together to overcome the generational and systemic obstacles in our way to create the future we want for ourselves. Michael has spoken to speak to us today on the topic of community shalom, becoming the peace we seek. Please welcome and prepare yourself to hear the message that Michael brings us today. Welcome, Michael, and I look forward to your message.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Before I get started, the community work that I'm doing is embedded in or merged with the youth advocacy piece. What we've done is kind of updated my role in a sense. And so I do more community advocacy that involves the youth mentorship. We wanted to broaden the spectrum a little bit. But yes, and so I'm super thankful to be here today, working with Daniel and the rest. It's been amazing for me, and I get to talk about something I truly believe in and care about. I'm sorry I don't have any slides or anything, but this has been adapted a little bit because some of the things that we've been talking about lately around CVI, which is community violence intervention, fits very seamlessly with how to transform neighborhoods and how to empower communities. So I'll kind of get started with a little bit of framing. One, tell you how we got here. I originally started working with Angela Chang, who's in the Hamilton County Public Defender's Office, working with youth in the court system. What I found out from there was that they were getting access to wonderful resources, organizations, trainings, rehabilitative services. The problem was they didn't have anybody in the community that would help them translate what they were learning in these services into the community language. And so when I got back to the community, the same community violence was there, the same drug dealers, the same individuals that were constantly recruiting them. And if we think about what the community does well when it comes to maladaptive behaviors, they recruit and offer belonging for these young people. And so we found it to be a problem. And so from that, working with them in the court system, we began to try to identify how do we get to the community. And so through my work, I started focusing on more on how do we help individuals in the community become those mentors and begin to do some of that work that I was doing individually. And this is what led me to doing more of this community advocacy. So shalom is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of right relationship. Right? In scripture is relational, economic, spiritual, and communal. This ecosystem of wholeness. This is what we want to bring to communities because communities are shaped by trauma. And the first thing they're not asking is, what do you offer? They're asking, are you safe and will you stay? So this framework invites us to become what we claim to bring. Peace is not imported, peace is embodied. Now, how this fits in with CVI is that CVI is not a pathway, not or a destination. It's a pathway, not a destination. Community violence intervention is often described in tactical language: interruption, mediation, risk, reduction. All that is true, but incomplete. Within a community shalom framework, CVI is better understood as applied reconciliation under pressure. It is what peace looks like when it steps into the street before violence becomes destiny. So CVI does not begin with punishment or policy. It starts with proximity. Credible messengers are people whose lived experience grant them relational authority. They enter moments of volatility not to control behavior, but to calm the nervous system of the neighborhood. In these theological terms, it's relational, it's incarnational. Peace takes on flesh and shows up where fear has learned the map of the heart. So one thing I firmly believe is my work centers on is working with local churches. It's really centered on the local church. My belief is that the local church has to become the pillar of what it used to be in the beginning, a house on the hill that cannot be hidden, right? And so we have got to be able to bring the local church and empower them to be the hospital that it was created to be, the place where individuals who are hurting, seeking justice, they can come, not necessarily to get that solved, but to seek relational currency, to seek relational affirmation for that connection. And so we need to move trauma-aware structures with strategies and mature into trauma-responsive systems. So that's kind of the framework of the work that I'm doing, right? It's ushering in this presence of shalom. And we often talk about holistic care. And I've seen it many times that the one key piece that's missing is that spiritual aspect, right? Because we are attempting to teach individuals about friendships, about love. And if we look at the four types of love, we're trying to teach them about brotherly love. And so we have to be able to have a disposition, a posture, because that's what it is. This is not a strategy I come into the neighborhood with. This is a posture that we set with. This has to be our disposition. And so what I'm going to map out now is there's 4 phases I use to enter community. So if you're taking notes, so the phase 1 is rapport building, entering the community. Phase 2 is reconcile, demonstrating that safety is real. Phase 3 is rest and restore, or rebuilding power together. And then phase 4 is to reap, sustaining a culture of shalom. Now, what I'll say is that from a strategy standpoint, this looks good on paper. What I will say is that this is not the framework. This is a framework that I've seen and used that I believe that really works in communities, because it takes that true holistic approach. And what I also say is that there's no one way to do this. This is a flow, right? I always talk about how water can't flow uphill. This is the same thing. As we're going down the hill, sometimes we get to a place where we get stuck and we're going to have to go back up to the top. So this is not in any particular order, but it is a flow that works in sequential sections. And so phase 1 is rapport building, entering the community. So here's where trust begins with presence, not programs. So why this is important, and these first 2 phases are the most critical phases that I believe that most organizations, and I've worked in a lot of nonprofits and schools, struggle with, is because the one thing that costs the most that we struggle to afford is time. We try to quantify time, we try to contextualize time, but time is the value that sometimes we don't have that, because we have to give, we have to quantify that at the end of the year. The year comes up, we've got to give numbers. And sometimes building rapport, that can take 9 to 10 months just to get that trust. And then as we move through it, you'll see why sometimes that's important. So trust begins with presence, not programs. So rapport is not a strategy, it's a posture. In communities shaped by high ACEs and collective trauma, people scan first for safety, not competence. This phase is about becoming accessible to the community without requiring the community to translate itself for us. So we use things like behavior matching the attire, language, pace, the humor, and cultural reference. It's not mimicry, but humility in motion. Cultural intelligence is measured less by what we know and more by how well we listen without defensiveness. Showing up means counting the costs. releasing timelines, suspending outcomes, and entering without extraction. We pursue shared interests in genuine relationships, allowing the community's history to set the narrative frame. The work is slow, it's reverent, even holy. We honor fractures without rushing to fix them, trusting that presence outlasting curiosity is what grows trust. So in this first phase, CVI aligns seamlessly with rapport building. Violence interruption fails without trust, and trust cannot be hurried. Outreach workers enter without symbols of power, attuning to language, rhythm, and presence. Prevention here is relational long before it's tactical. The same quiet, watchful presence that interrupts violence also prepares the soil for healing. Learning who holds influence, where pain gathers, and how safety is defined by the community itself is vital. Again, this rapport building phase, it is critical that we remove ourselves from the equation, that we understand where we're coming into, that we are just showing up. So one of the communities I'm working in now, I think I've been embedded in that community for about 3 years. And it took about 1.5 to 2 years to really gain the trust of the individual partner that I was going to work with, right? Because I had to learn what they had been through, what disappointments, why people aren't showing up, how to increase and become more visible in the neighborhood. And then it was the journey together, because I can't do it myself because I'm not from that community. I'm the outside entity, right? So I can bring a strategy, but I had to do it with somebody in the community because they bring the relational currency, because they will be there, and it has to be sustainable. And so the next phase of that was going around, walking the neighborhood, creating different programs, trying to figure out how we can be more of a presence in the community. And that has to be consistent. And so that is what we were able to do, to the point now where we've opened up a after school program that's free for the community that holds about 20 kids. We have a summer reading program. We do summer camps. We do what we call justice hubs, right? That talks about social justice, 4 empowerment series throughout the year, where there's daycare provided so parents can come learn about what's important to them in their community. We do 2 staples with that. We always do a financial class, and we always do a know your rights or some type of justice, a law justice class at the end right before summer. The other 2 programs or classes are up to the community. What's important to that community? What's going on in that community? Is it poverty? Is it drugs? Is it domestic violence? There's a lot of injustices. Is it housing injustice? Whatever the case might be, we want to target those other 2 empowerment series to align with what the community is currently going through or what they're struggling with. So therefore, we can begin to create more of that felt safety. So on to phase 2, which is reconcile. Demonstrating that safety is real. This is where psychological presence and co-regulated consistency matter the most. So reconciliation is relational repair across 3 dimensions: personal, communal, and spiritual. We begin by noticing what is broken in relationships, systems, and expectations, and by naming where situational leadership already exists. Power is not absent in traumatized communities. It's often fragmented and fatigued. Trauma does not trust what it cannot predict. So consistency becomes a theological act. Returning to the same places, greeting people by name, keeping promises, and staying when it gets complicated. These are not logistics, but liturgies. This phase is marked by low invitation and high challenge. We resist overwhelming access while still calling forth change. Psychological presence is built through rituals of reliability, shared meals, open hours, conflict handled with dignity. The community watches closely, and safety becomes believable when compassion holds under pressure and consistency survives inconvenience. Now, usually in this phase, where I say the first 2 phases are typically the hardest, giving the time to build rapport, because we're not challenging, we're not really learning anything, we're just showing up, we're being consistent, we're doing our part. Part of what makes this second phase very hard is because of that low invitation, high challenge. This is the phase where typically you challenge students and we typically might lose them. They may react because we don't know much about their behaviors or their trauma or how it plays out. We don't know what their protective strategies are at this point. In this phase is when you typically learn what those are. Is it fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? We're going to find out in phase 2 what their protective strategies are. And that is where it's very, very, very important to withstand the test of time, because the community and individuals are testing to see, can I trust you and are you safe? And that's what they want to know. And will you stay? And that's what they want to see. So they're very good at testing that because they're in protective mode. So we want to look for broken relationships and systems. This is inherently high challenge because what you're asking people to see is what is fractured, including their own role within it. And sometimes that includes us as providers. That requires strong boundaries and clear expectations. This is where a lot of that coaching has to come in, because we are going to be able to move individuals towards interdependency. We don't want them to be dependent or codependent, and we don't want them to be independent, because independent, they have no network, they have no community. They're off on their own doing their own thing. So when it comes to personally, communally, and spiritually, this depth of examination increases challenge, not invitation. These domains touch identity, power, and meaning. Widening the invitation too early can dilute accountability and overwhelm the person. So I'll give you a quick example. There was a young man I was working with. I had been working with him for about a year and a half. And we had built that rapport, and we had gotten into that phase 2 and that challenge phase. And we had a program early in the day. I remember talking with him. You could tell something was kind of going on. He was kind of out of sorts. And so later on that night, about 9, 10 o'clock, probably about 9:30, I guess, he gives me a call. He's like, "Hey, Mr. Mike, man, I'm struggling right now." I said, "Okay, what's going on?" I'm always available to talk. They have a code they would send me to let me know that it's important. And so I talked to him, and he says, "Man, I'm out here starving right now. I have no food. I'm struggling." And so I would ask him some simple questions. Okay, well, let me ask you a question. When's the last time you ate? And so he'd give me the answer. I say, "Okay, what choices have you made to do that? Are you still working?" I go through all these bevy of questions to make sure that we're on the same page. Then I would ask him, I say, "Hey, earlier on the program today, when you had an opportunity to take home all the leftover food in the apartment that you're staying in because you're in independent housing," I asked him, "What was wrong with the food and why didn't you take it?" And of course, he gave me some excuse for some reason. I said, "So are we really starving or are we wanting food for convenience?" And so this is where the challenge came in. And at this moment, you run the risk of losing this kid. I don't know what he's going to do. He may cuss me out. He may blow up. He may never call back again. And so what I asked him to do, I said, "Okay, so it sounds like you just want what you want more than what you're starving." I said, "So here's the deal. You're not going to starve tonight." I said, "But tomorrow morning, we can connect early in the morning and get you whatever you need. So that way you have enough groceries in your apartment. So that way you're fine. And we can go from there. Does that sound like a plan?" Of course, he's really frustrated, upset at that moment. Says something, but then eventually hangs up, right? Now, because we were consistent in community, this young man was always showing up to this place that I would see him all the time. And so I know I went into repair phase. I had to rupture, and I had to be ready to repair that relationship. But that challenge was important because typically what kids will do, or community members will do, they'll triangulate and they'll go call somebody else that they know, right, that has a heart for it, give them the sob story. And what'll happen is they'll send them an Uber Eats card, and there's no accountability in that moment because we have to begin to help them understand the decisions that they're making. Again, if you go deeper into some other not theological, but more psychology perspectives, there are some developmental phases in kids that we have to kind of remap and restructure. And we won't get into that now. This is just an overview of what we want to do. But that is the process in this reconciliation part. I have to reconcile that he has the power to choose and that he has the power of choice and that it's okay for him to own his choices. So we have to learn how to empower situational leadership. Situational leadership is not everyone leads all the time. It is discerning who should lead when. The discernment requires limited invitation and clear challenge to step up, step back, or share power appropriately. This is where we have to expect the unexpected. This is where ruptures in a relationship happen. And this is typically, again, like I said, where a lot of the pressure comes on providers, comes on community members, because we don't want to lose a kid. We feel like we want to make sure that we keep them in the fold. But when we do that, we only handicap them more than we empower them. So here, CVI comes fully into view. Violence is rarely impulsive. It is patterned. The trauma remembers. CVI disrupts those patterns through co-regulated consistency, showing up repeatedly, mediating with dignity, returning after the incident, following up after the arrest, and sitting with grief without trying to solve it. CVI operates squarely in the low invitation, high challenge space, confronting retaliatory violence while offering relational containment. This is reconciliation under strain, where peace proves it can hold. And then there's other different strategies. And so this is where partnering with a CVI group, Back2Back Cincinnati does not do CVI. That is not their mission and vision. The community and the integration is what we do best. I created this today because being able to bring in a CVI component is that true collaboration and cooperation, right? To be able to merge these things together to work hand in hand as one can focus on, because this is a very intense, a very regulated, and a very highly focused process in CVI. And then even thinking about some of that credible messengers and getting into the streets and really going after the gun violence and going after those that are really in there. And so you need professionals in this realm that can come in and really sustain and maintain that, not only for the health of the credible messengers, but for the community members as well, and those that are serving in that realm. So those are the first two phases. Phase 1 and phase 2, they go hand in hand. Now, why I said before there's no particular order, in a sense, is because in this phase, if that relationship was broken, what I had to do the next time I saw that young man, I had to go back up to phase 1. And I had to use that investigative rapport building skills as if I had never met that young man before, because that put me in a humble posture to learn what was currently going on in his current state, because that rupture is going to bring out all that trauma that we're trying to figure out what it is, which is why the more we're proximate in community, we can see those behaviors, because the kid will always show up. And again, in that shared power, I might not be the person he needs to talk to that time. It might be my coworker, it might be the pastor, but through connection and collaboration and cooperation, we can identify what this young person is going through, what the community is going through, what adults going through, whoever the case might be. We can identify what that is, and I can use time to repair that relationship to get back in the door. And that's usually where that pressure builds, because again, if it took 9 months to build that rapport, sometimes challenging them in this moment is very hard to do, because I don't want to lose the kid and knowing that I have to get these results or I have to report out or whatever the case might be, which is why community is vital, because they don't necessarily have the pressure of time. Also, these two phases, these are universal, which is why the community has to be important, because whatever faith community you're in, whatever space you're in, these principles and strategies are the posture that I want to bring. But the individuals in the community, they know the pulse of their neighborhood. They know the relational currency of their neighborhood. They know the spirituality of their neighborhood, and they can be the champion of that. We just want to walk alongside them and institute these processes to provide support, whatever training they might need. And the biggest thing is a trauma care training that we bring. We want to be able to come in the neighborhood and train the organization under trauma-informed care so they can be sustainable throughout their duration of this process, because this is more than just a one-time thing. This is a lifestyle. This is transforming a community to where they now begin to believe what they care about and they fight for themselves. So that's phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3 is rest and restore, which is rebuilding power together, from doing for to building with. So rest is not inactivity. It is stability. Once reconciliation takes roots, routines are established to hold what has been healed. Wins are celebrated. Now, ruptures are anticipated without panic, because in this phase, you've learned more about that individual. Because in phase 2, you might go through 5 or 6 iterations of relationship ruptures because you're challenging the individual or the community or whatever the case might be. So, but by this phase in phase 3, you kind of know what will spark something going on. So, for example, a young man, every Christmas, we found out that this young man lost his mom around Christmas. And so there was always a big violent behavior to this young man. So we were able to get in front of this thing and do maybe a trip or do something else where we were able to kind of contain it, but we were anticipating this rupture, but we did it in a more controlled environment. So the consequences wouldn't be as high. So here we want to anticipate ruptures without panic. We have shared scripts relied upon so conflict does not collapse trust. When rupture occurs, rhythms are restored quickly with dignity, and stories are held in ways that honor both what is ending and what is emerging. This is how power is rebuilt without coercion. Co-creation marks the turning point. Residents design, lead, and name priorities. Programs become platforms for the agency, and this is key. Trauma-aware structures mature into trauma-responsive systems, where healing is cultivated rather than delivered. Dignity returns to the center, and belonging becomes a practice discipline. As violence decreases, predictability increases. CVI evolves from interruption to co-creation. Those once labeled high risk become co-designers of safety, Former interrupters mentor new leaders, and community norms shift through ownership rather than enforcement. In this phase, CVI embodies the Shalom movement from doing for to building with, where violence prevention becomes community stewardship and rest and restore become shared rhythms. And we'll get into the last phase here. So phase 4, this is sustaining a culture of Shalom. So this is a covenant, continuity, and generational flourishing. So reaping is not extraction, but stewardship, marked by signs that are subtle yet unmistakable. Interdependence replaces isolation. Youth invest in others because they have been invested in. Economic life grows from reciprocity rather than rescue. And stories of transformation circulate without curation. Here, trust matures into a covenant. Leadership is local, structure is stabilized, and the community becomes the guardian of its own healing pathways. Trauma no longer defines the future, it is woven into a redeemed narrative. This is generational work. Shalom is compounding one restored relationship at a time until peace is no longer an intervention, but a culture. In this phase, CVI no longer stands alone. It dissolves into the life of the community. Youth pathways replace street pathways. Economic opportunity interrupts scarcity cycles, and stories of hope replace rumors of retaliation. CVI fulfills its deepest purpose by working itself out of a job, in a sense, not because violence is ignored, but because the community has become the primary steward of safety, sustained through shared responsibility and generational continuity. So in closing, community shalom is not something we install. It is something we practice until it practices us. When we choose presence over performance, consistency over charisma, and covenant over convenience, we become the peace we seek. The work bends towards wholeness because God has already bent toward the neighborhood first. This is not a shortcut, but a pilgrimage, one that often changes the pilgrim. Community shalom gives CVI its horizon, and it gives community shalom its teeth. Violence is not merely stopped but transformed. Peace is not merely imagined, but practiced in real time. Under real pressure, with real people. Rooted in shalom, CVI aims not only for fewer shootings, but for deeper belonging, shared agency, and a future that no longer needs interruption because it has learned another way to live. In this way, CVI becomes more than a strategy. It becomes a sacrament of peace, visible and embodied, faithfully present until the neighborhood itself becomes the peace it once needed to be protected. So those are my 4 phases that I use in community now, that I've done in a couple communities, that I've used in the coaching process. And in the coaching process, those 4 phases are still the same 4 phases I use when working with an individual in coaching. And again, it is the posture and the heart set that really transforms individuals, that transforms neighborhoods. This also doesn't mean that this isn't a journey without risk, because sometimes you do lose individuals. Sometimes I think I've had 3 individuals that have been shot and killed. We've had 2 young men that have been shot in the eye. Those 2 young men are now still alive and well, flourishing with their right mind, that I attribute only God could have done, because the way they got shot, there's no way that they should be in their right mind, but they are. And they're functioning and they're flourishing and they're driving and they're initiating that conversation with our coaches. But it does come at risk, which is why we have to make sure we have a community aspect to it, because sometimes that weighs heavy on us. But we also have to understand that we know that there's somebody in control, and it's not us, and that God has got whoever is out there. Our job is to make sure we come along and provide them some measure of peace that they may have never experienced a day in their life. I mean, the last story I'll give you, and then we'll open up for questions. There was a young man I know. I was working with him. And again, because some of the decisions that he made are his decisions. And no matter, I can't put myself in harm's way, and I can't run out and be the rescuer. This young man kept putting himself in the middle of gang violence. But every time something would go down, he would always call me, and he'd be like, man, I don't know what to do. I'm struggling. And I remember one night, me and this other coach, he called both of us on two-way, and he said, I want to thank you guys for being there. He said, I don't know what's going to happen tonight, but I know that I wouldn't have made this far without you. And unfortunately, that young man was killed that night. But it was that measure of assurance for me that even in that moment of uncertainty for him, he had found some small measure of peace. And that to me is what it's about more. It's about that than anything else.
Okay, thank you, Michael. For questions, if you look at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer, you have React and you can raise your hand. I think the other, as we start, is two things. One, let's just take a moment to open our hearts to hear the message we heard today. And two, Michael, I know that you have other commitments and you said that you made a comment about time and it being precious. We want to be respectful of your time, and so we could ask questions all day. So when you need to go, I have lots of questions. I know people have it. Let us know. We want to be respectful of your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Okay. We have Danny has his hand up.
There was one in the chat. Carol put one in the chat.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you, Michael, so much for your words. Really, really powerful. I think leaves us with a lot to think about, and I am glad that we also recorded it so that we can kind of go back and grapple with all this. I mean, it's just really, really rich. And so I realize also that probably I should have mentioned maybe at the beginning kind of this larger context for what Michael's talking about here, and then I will end up with a question. But and everyone at Mark knows, I think, that we as people of faith do want to see more peace in our communities, but we also are realizing, I think, over time that law enforcement is not the entire answer. There are moments, perhaps, when yes, we do need police, we do need the court system, we do need the prison system, but in so many circumstances, what we need is what Michael's talking about, what he's describing is a community response. For people, individuals such as Michael, organizations, churches, to be the ecosystem, the community ecosystem that provides young people with other options, that provides them with a sense of belonging, with a sense of safety, a sense of reconciliation. And so that's the context, that as Mark, Back2Back, many other organizations that we're beginning to work with, we are trying to put together a framework, an agenda for how we can create new forms of safety without always just relying on law enforcement. And so, what we've heard today from Michael is this just beautiful description, of a process by which we, as people of faith, can be a part of creating new kinds of communities. And I love what you said, where it's to go from the sense of violence prevention to a sense of community stewardship. That once communities can actually be a part of stewarding themselves, of controlling what goes on in their communities, that is how peace can be built. And so how can, again, we as people of faith and members of church and houses of worships, as also citizens of a city, of a county, in a country, how can we both do the work on the ground, but also advocate for the policies necessary to make these processes of building strong communities that steward themselves? How can we do that? And so I think what Michael's describing here is a roadmap in a sense for that. But I do want to ask then, what you've described. I mean, it sounds beautiful, promising. Like, yes, this is absolutely the path we need to go down. So as you do this work and as you speak with people in the communities and, let's say also in policymaking circles, what kind of pushback do you get? I mean, you've even talked about talking with folks at the public defender's office. What kind of resistance or opposition is there to these sorts of processes, taking place in the communities?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the resistance really focuses around the punitive measure, the punitive mindset. And so a lot of my goal is to come in and help see a different framework, because a lot of it is, well, if they're criminals, they just need to be locked up for good. And we don't want to help them, or you're never going to be able to change the community because nobody cares. I'll answer kind of one of the questions that's in the chat too, as well, that speaks to this, because one of the questions was, how do you can't change the community because neighbors and people are always constantly in and out of the neighborhood, right? Because residents change locations due to housing instability and things like that. And so those were some of the challenges and responses we get back. When it came to CVI, a lot of the pushback always was because there's a deeper component into more of that piece where we're helping, we want people to be sustainable in what they're doing. So we want equitable wages for individuals getting paid. We also want to pay the mentors for the time that they're investing, right? Because we know money is a huge thing. So sometimes they'd be like, well, you're going to pay criminals to be criminals. Well, we're not doing that, right? We're helping transform a mindset. And so it doesn't mean that we walk up to somebody and say, hey, you want $100 to go do this journey. We go on the journey first, and then a product of their investment is maybe some type of stipend or something like that. So that's a lot of times where we get. But for the changes in residents here in Cincinnati, particularly, there's 52 neighborhoods in Cincinnati. And so my goal, not only as the community advocacy manager, but also the trauma-informed trainer, is to make sure that all 52 neighborhoods have some type of holistic trauma-informed access. Some neighborhoods have a ton of resources and a ton of individuals willing to do the work. So my job, first thing I do is always come into a neighborhood and I asset map. Who's in here, who's doing what, and I start having meetings. And so sometimes this is a matter of just training the individuals and in giving, if they don't have the structure, give them the structure, and then they're off and running, doing their own, which is great. And then we just become consultants. But the biggest piece is identifying in other neighborhoods, I'm not sure, cities and places, is identify what systems the most of these residents come in contact with, and how do we get to them to train them on their trauma-informed care so they can become trauma responsive. So when they do have to change neighborhoods, if there's a church in there, which is what we want to do, now there's a little bit easier onboarding process because the language is the same. And so it can be walked over. That, let's say JFS, Job and Family Services, or Child Services, can call this neighborhood community pastor and say, hey, pastor, we got a new family moving out there. We work with them through a trauma lens. We'd love for you to come down and meet them before they move out, right? Or whoever it might be, depending on what's going on with the situation. But that reconciliatory process is something that our residents don't get. Nobody calls from down there to connect them to the new neighborhood. So we want to change the identity and mindset of the systems we work with to help them meet their goals, right? Because it has to be mutual. You're going to have a better impact to report on, and we're going to have better integration into the neighborhood by having this meeting before they come to the neighborhood, and then they get to share language and like language, and it becomes a little bit easier for safety for them to trust it in a shorter amount of time. I'll answer one other question I see in the chat too, and then we'll open it back up. But one was, individual trauma therapy. Yeah, of course, those things are definitely going to happen. And that's where the goal for I know Carol put in their hubs, what we call them as hubs, is because we want to bring the professionals into the community, because it's less work on them to have to try to build the relational trust if the community is already doing it, if that partner in the community is already doing it. And so now what they can do is they can begin to help the family say, hey, I'm going to walk with you to this appointment. I think this is great. And then with those empowerment series, you could do some community trauma, healing circles or things like that. And so it's really bringing those professionals in to do some of that deeper work, because that is where a lot of that work has to be done, because it is layered. And there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a lot of remapping. But once they're in the door and that trust is there, that stuff happens. And even in some of our after school programs, we do a social emotional group to help them learn how to regulate themselves. And so we want to bring the community partners in, so therefore they can be the experts that they are, come into the neighborhoods and do the good work that they've been commissioned to do.
Ramona.
Hello, Michael, thank you so much. Presentation was phenomenal for me. I want to ask, as you were talking about the power of language, and also the mindset of punitive, that being, something, the pushback. And I just wonder sometimes about the language of at risk. It seems to align with fear. And I just wonder if, and how we see ourselves, youth, we're all at risk of something.
Right. Right.
It means that I just wonder who is comfortable with at risk. It seems to align with the punitive, how we see them.
Yes.
And I understand, maybe it's a collaboration. This just came to me. Maybe it's a collaboration. Is there some point that we can move from at risk to at promise? Because when, like for instance, if a youth goes back to wherever, the community which they're belonging to or whatever, I can imagine that the language is that, yeah, you're at risk. And it's very much of concern for me. Words become things, and I would like to know what powers are comfortable with, yes, they're at risk. How about,
Absolutely.
I just thank you for working on it, Michael. I know you will. I have great faith in you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And so what I would say is, when I say this is the strategy that gets the dollars in, right? It speaks the language of the courts. It speaks the language of the donors. It speaks the language of the grants. My job is to go in the community. Same thing with juvenile. We don't call them juveniles until they get in the court. It's called juvenile court, but nobody else calls them juveniles. And so, that's that negative connotation around it. So when we get to the neighborhood, we have a training called Equity and Unity. And so we want to use any type of trainings we can to help remove those languages, that language, and say, first thing to do is find out the young person's name, approach them as a person. And it's a person-centered approach. Who is this person you're talking to? Who is this individual? And go on an investigative journey to know them first, and then call them by their name. And I think that was part of that report, the consistency in the reconciliation process. That's exactly what the neighborhood and young people are looking for. Do you slip up and start calling me a youth or a young man, or I told you my name, did you remember it? Or are you authentic enough to come back and say, hey, I'm horrible at names. Can you give me your name again? Because I want to call you by your name because you are a person and you have meaning in this world. And so my job and our job as a community is to come in and help remove some of these typical words and verbiages to say, approach them as a person. They don't need a title. They already have a name, one that God already gave them from the beginning. So we need to honor and respect that and give that to them. But it's up to us to be humble enough to go in and do that. And that's where that challenge comes in from. You think about from a systemic standpoint, where, again, it's difficult because some of us might lose some of those organizations that we challenge because they don't like what you're saying. But that's okay, because I'd rather put the challenge out there for later on down the road to see these results. And then what I've always noticed and always understood to be true, if you're doing the work, at some point in time, whether it's the youth, the community, or the organizations, they will always ask, why do you keep showing up and why are you here? Because you keep doing the work. And eventually they keep saying, well, how do you get so much success? I don't understand it. And then that's your end to talk about it. But yes, 100%, we have to challenge the narrative around language and how we start to view not only community people, community members, but also our youth as well.
Quite concerned about those that are supporting, that are very comfortable with that risk.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So I got time for about 2 more questions, and I got to hop off. And then I'll be ready.
Okay.
Be happy to get back to anybody.
Okay, Amara.
Hi. Also, great presentation. I have a lot of. I'm going to come away from that thinking about myself. I was noticing when you were talking about these, the power of words, Ramona, and how important it is to change the language specifically to respect the room you're in, the person you're in front of. I was wondering about the therapeutic tools and the approach towards more clinical engagement with certain individuals in the community. I know that there are a lot of people who have had very traumatic relationships with health systems, whether mental, physical, behavioral, whatever. So I was wondering if you might want to take a second, or like if you could give us some a view into how you would approach responding to someone who is resistant to those tools, traumatized by those tools, would prefer not to engage in those tools, would prefer maybe a religious or spiritual answer to like cognitive and behavioral problems, and what you do to either draw that line or shift modes for somebody else's benefit.
Yeah. So it's kind of a couple of processes. So one, the first thing I'd always try to do with my community partners is make sure that they're trained in some trauma responsive care too, right? So that way, that's where they can begin to learn some different languages and how to approach it. And typically, if that goes over well, they begin to see themselves a little bit different, and then they can show up in the neighborhoods instead of just coming for an appointment. They come, on a random Monday and just volunteer and help out and be present. But then also too, it's working with the community specifically around why these things can be comfortable. Because when you have the trust with an individual, you can help them see that. And usually what I've done in the past, and some people just draw that line and then we'll find alternative ways. But sometimes I've done in the past is, hey, I'll sit with you for that first session. How does that sound? And so we'll talk to the individual to say, hey, they feel more comfortable. I'm in there. What does that look like? Or how do we do more of a group thing? But typically it's really in the relationship building piece, right? With the community member, and then the partners on helping them understand, hey, here's what you're walking into. Hey, the community ACEs in this neighborhood are high. Here's why. Here's what this community has been going through. We've got 2 or 3 families that are really open to doing this. But what I've found, again, is that when you have really good relationship with families, and again, it takes time, they typically will get to a point where they want to help, because most of them do. They just don't know if they can trust you because, like you said before, I've been burned before. And so I just don't know if I can trust. But if you gain that trust, which is why it's really important to be authentic and honest and open, they'll follow you. So if you go into that room, they're going to go with you. And you just have to be honest, like, hey, this is going to be a clinical session. Let me go with you the first time to help you understand it. We can talk about it after. And if you don't like it, we don't have to do it again. Right. And so you set yourself up. I always think about as parenting, right? I have to be careful what I tell my children. If I tell my 5-year-old something, trust me, later on the day, she's like, Dad, you said I could have a cookie after I got home. I really meant after dinner, but guess what? Okay, I got to give you that cookie now, right? So it's very similar. So if we can really be honest and authentic with them, and sometimes, again, they've been closed off to it, and that's okay. And then what I do is next month, 2 months later, 3 months later, as they're giving me more problems, or they share me with their problems, hey, do you might want to try that therapy again? I think it'd be really good. Or we find a healing circle where it's more of a group thing, and then slowly walk them into the clinical process if they're not really ready for it. So find some of those other group-oriented type things to do first. All right, I got one more here.
Carol.
I have my hand raised, but if somebody else wanted to go, I just was talking. I saw what Mark Basil wrote, that he was saying it was great with you. We're working with JFS, and I was curious when you said the JFS example, is that aspirational, like when you're talking about referring between community hubs, or is that accurate that currently that you have that kind of a relationship with JFS?
No, so yeah, great question. So I'm currently working on that. Again, unfortunately, we all face the the daunting task of our teams are small, and so we're a mighty team of 3 here, my team. So getting neighborhood stabilized was first, because I think if I can show them what it looks like in a neighborhood, I might have a better end to be like, because that's a big system, right? I used to work at JFS. I was ongoing. It's a big, huge behemoth. But if I can show them what the neighborhood's doing and say, hey, would this be helpful? Then my next phase is to get into some of these bigger, like the court. We're already in the court system, so working there. Now my goal is to get more to JFS to start working that lens and getting that going there. So CYC has just asked us about training for more mentors because they got a bid to do the court. So we're starting to get some notoriety around, hey, let's get everybody trained around this. I think this could work. So slowly but surely, we're starting to get there. So hopefully one day, God will bless us with enough to get more staff and we can really go out and do the work. But, that comes with money, and the way things are going, nobody knows what's going on right now.
And I'll just add that the community safety, community violence intervention group with Michael's been working with us almost weekly. And the coalition that we're building with Amos is all going in that direction for the larger picture. So we're grateful. And so if y'all want to get more involved, please step in. I think we've had a few turnovers, and so
absolutely. Well, I have to go now. Work. I appreciate you guys. Please send me whatever questions you have, or I'll be glad to jump back on a call another time and talk more about it. Just let me know.
Right, Michael. Thank you very much. I'm saying that thank you on behalf of Mark and myself. Your insights, your experiences have been wonderful. The other is that you are an example of someone who has a calling, answers it, and does the work that needs to be done in our world. And we really appreciate that, and we commend you and hope that you keep up with it. So again, thank you for sharing. It's given us much to think about. Hopefully our hearts are open, and have a good day.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. All right. Well, yeah, thanks to everybody for listening and for your awesome questions. I would just maybe start off, we've got technically 9 minutes before we close at 1:15. We could always go a little bit over if folks want to. I mean, are there any other comments or questions that people would want to share out in response to Michael's talk before we move on to some other updates?
Just one. If you don't have a whole lot of time, but you think you can do something, would you just communicate with back-to-back? Michael, what do you do?
My understanding was that just right there at the end, he was very open to, and I would assume this, he would be totally open to receiving emails from us. He even said like he would jump back on a call with us. So or Carol, if you've got it handy, would you want to just throw Michael's email there in the chat?
Sure.
And then I know Dave Maley, you were also wondering about being in touch with him. So yeah, definitely reach out personally on behalf of your house of worship. Or if again you think there's stuff that Mark should do in conjunction with him in relation to the work that he's doing, let us know. And as Carol did say, Michael has been attending our Mark Community Safety Committee meetings almost every week for a number of months now. So it's really exciting to have him also already kind of working directly with Mark in terms of us putting together our advocacy platforms moving forward.
Thank you.
Right, and I would say that as with many organizations, Back2Back has an excellent web page, and they have a form where if you actually just have a little time or a lot of time, that you can say that you want to do sweat equity work. They don't just ask for money, but they very much ask for people to contribute of themselves. And so you could visit their webpage.
And there's several hubs. So just to clarify, this is something that took me a minute to realize. Michael currently is really not doing explicitly CVI work. He's not working with active shooters, which really is a fundamental part of being able to reduce gun violence. But he is doing community mentoring. He has done community mentoring interpersonally with young youth, but he's also, right now, he's primarily working with community hubs. He's active in Evanston. I think it's St. Andrews is the name of the congregation. Thank you. And I think he's also, there's a few other ones that he's also pretty active with. And so while Back2Back is very small and not really focused on the volunteer piece of it, connecting to the hubs where his work is being played out by those sustainable local community advocates and volunteers, that's a great way to connect into the work. And and sometimes it's just if you can, consistency is a real important part of it. So if there's a specific event you want to attend on that event and they need help moving things around, but if you want to build relationships with kids, I think it's really helpful if you can kind of find a schedule that works for you and for them, and where you can either participate in it with kind of a regular rhythm.
Yeah, thanks for that, Carol.
But in the meantime, working with Danny and I on the committee and the coalition building, that's something, a lot of people feel like I don't have the expertise, but we're learning ourselves as we go along, and we're building and we're educating. And part of the job is, for people who don't have a lot of experience to come in and ask lots of questions. And from that process, we get our messaging better. We are going to be, because part of the job is to really take what's, that was like a master's. Michael has 2 masters, by the way, so what he's really thought deeply about this work, and but taking that not deep intuitive knowledge as well as intellectual knowledge and creating it something that's very accessible. We need help with people being translators to ask questions and to help us get the messages out to the city council, to the county, and to community congregations.
I just want to mention, I'm popping in. I know and thank you so much for your patience with this. Being radically inclusive, we may think that we have to give a whole lot of time, and if you have it, you can. I just want to point out how empowering one message, a few words, the contact with people can make a big difference. So I just want everyone to consider that likewise. Because sometimes we will block ourselves saying, I don't have 6 hours. Well, depending on what you say and how you connect can be life-changing. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I would add to that. I was at an event and I had been talking with a woman there, and she kind of I was leaving early, and we'd had enough of a connection that she was willing to ask me for a ride home. And during the ride home, she shared that her son had just gotten in trouble at school. He was going to be suspended. She was really upset. She didn't know what to do. And I was like, hey, I know Michael. You should talk to him. Maybe he can really help you. So, I mean, she and I've only spent a couple, several minutes together. But we had a call with Michael on the phone as we were driving her. I was driving her to her home. So just not being in a rush, being willing to reach out and helping people realize, yeah, you're there, you're available. That's a huge kind of important opportunity to connect across communities.
Danny, director's report.
Okay. Yep. Let's go ahead and do our updates here. Thanks to everybody for your questions, your discussion. So just some quick updates. First off, just want to say a big thank you to everyone, especially on this call, but everybody in the Mark Network. We did meet our fundraising goal for the end of the year for 2025, and so that's really exciting. Just want to say thanks to everybody. I know a lot of you on this call donated, and many of you increased the amount that you donate, whether individually or as your judicatory. And so, just from the bottom of my heart, from the heart of Mark. Thank you. Really appreciate y'all. And so, looking forward to bringing that momentum into 2026 as well. There is a lot that we're doing, a lot that's going on, but I will be brief with just a couple of these updates. First off, we are having our annual meeting February 17th. So that's also on the agenda that was shared out for this meeting, but it's going to be February 17th from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. At the Fifth Third Convening Center, United Way Building. That invitation and that information has also gone out on our email listserv, but do please sign up for that if you're interested in attending. It's going to be jam-packed with a lot of activities, a lot of information. I will be providing kind of a more full executive director's report for 2025, both in terms of kind of the substance and the impact of what we did in terms of advocacy and education, but also a financial report and also a budget for 2026. So we are planning to approve that budget. It will be a balanced budget. So we're hoping that all of our delegates will be willing to approve that at our February annual meeting. So please put that on your calendar. Finally, at that meeting, we are also going to be trying to approve updated mission and vision statements for Mark. We have a strategic planning committee that has been working really hard over the past year or so, and one of the fruits of that labor is proposals for updated mission and vision statements for Mark. So those statements are going to be sent out to your judicatories, both to your judicatory leaders and to your board representatives for Mark. So again, just so that you're aware that we are going to have that on our agenda for our annual meeting in February. From there, also we are planning to have a good speaker for that annual meeting, really leaning towards having a speaker that will speak about immigration. As many of you will recall, we formally voted as judicatories to adopt immigration as one of our ongoing concerns for 2026, along with community safety and affordable housing. So we will have 3 concerns for 2026. That's going to be a lot. But there's a lot that needs to be done right now in our city, in our region, in our world. So immigration is extremely important. We're hoping to have a speaker on immigration for that annual meeting in February. And then that next update is then that we also do want to form an immigration committee within Mark. And so I've already received a couple messages of interest in being a part of that immigration committee. But if you, as an individual or someone would be interested in serving on that committee, please reach out and let me know or let Holly know. We definitely need some more folks so that we can be as effective and impactful as possible as Mark in working on that concern. So if you're interested in working on immigration, please let us know. From there, the last big announcement or kind of update that I want to share is vis-a-vis our city government in the city of Cincinnati. Many of you may have heard. I would want to say it was last week, beginning of last week. Mayor Purival made an announcement that he is planning to propose an increase to the earned income tax in the city of Cincinnati. And so typically nobody likes new taxes, of course, but he has proposed this new earned income tax to have two purposes. One being to further fund public safety, which in the language of the mayor and of city council typically means more funding for law enforcement, more funding for surveillance. They've been investing in drones and investing in more cameras. And so that's one of their ideas for part of the revenues from this increase in earned income tax. And the other portion they want for that revenue and earned income tax to go to disrupting poverty. And so, especially on the disrupting poverty idea, he has not provided a lot of details, but rather has invited communities, organizations to express their views on what we think the city should do to disrupt poverty. And so, as Mark, we want to take that seriously, and we want to get our message out there to the mayor, to city council, to our elected officials about what we think needs to be done to disrupt poverty, and also to contribute to public safety, or what we like to say, like Michael was talking about, community safety, and especially community-led safety. Recognizing that it's really communities, as they strengthen, they become stewards of their own communities. That's what makes them safer. And so I really want to get that message to the mayor and to city council in the course of the next month or two. So also that invitation stands to all of you as well. Reach out to me, come to our committee meetings, come to any sort of moment that Mark has, and express what you think we should be advocating for with the mayor and with our elected officials when it comes to public safety, or again, community safety, and as well with disrupting poverty. So I think this is hopefully a big opportunity. Hopefully this call for ideas from citizens and residents of Cincinnati is not superficial. Hopefully he really is interested in listening. But again, as Mark and many of our partner organizations, both in housing and in community safety, we are planning to provide some serious proposals and inputs to the mayor and to city council in this context. Those are, and thank you, Ray Jane. Our housing committee does meet every Monday at 3:30. Our community safety committee meets every Thursday at 10 a.m. And again, we're looking to start that immigration committee as soon as we can, once we get some members on board with it. So any questions, comments, thoughts, or other updates that folks would have that I missed? Ariel.
There was also an announcement last night at St. James that City Council is at their January 22nd meeting that we should be asking the mayor not to collaborate with ICE. And I don't remember what time public testimony starts. Is it at 1 o'clock?
1:30.
1:30. So they want us to pack the room with people asking our city to walk the talk of being an immigrant supporting community. And because they're afraid that the mayor is going to roll over and collaborate with ICE. And Hamilton County is the only county that doesn't have an agreement with ICE anymore in the Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky area. I think Warren County joined the list of counties that are now willing to work with ICE and people. So our city shouldn't be behind our county. I mean, it shouldn't be doing less than our county.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that, Ariel. We will definitely work on being present for that.
Can I just real quick, I'm sorry to jump Jonathan, but just to respond to Ariel, I understand that potentially today at the city council meeting, was there a city council meeting today?
Yeah.
There was the potential of voting on a resolution that was proposed that basically said that all law enforcement, federal, state, local, all have to abide by the rules that are in place here, namely wearing body cameras, not covering their faces, and not some of the scare and unjust tactics that they're using. And there was a rumor that it was going to be voted on today.
Oh, good.
At
That's in the
City
paper
Council.
today. That just, yeah.
What's that?
They plan to vote this afternoon, I think.
Right. So that's what I heard today. So
Also denouncing the killing of
Renee Good. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That it's that's part of that's the impetus for the the resolution was in response to Renee Good's murder in Minneapolis. So that isn't I don't believe there's anything in there about a specific refusal to work, enter any sort of like 287G or whatever kind of agreement with the federal government, but it is in response to the extrajudicial behavior of ICE and making our city safe from that kind of behavior. So we'll see what happens this afternoon. But
says it asks federal agents in Cincinnati to follow local police policies, including not wearing non-medical masks. And council members are also urging federal agents to wear body cameras and clearly display their identification.
Great.
Yeah,
Which would help.
Yeah, taking a step in the right direction, it sounds like, at least.
Yeah.
A little step, but a step.
Good. Good. Thank you, Andrew. That makes my day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew, for that for that information. And I was looking to the folks. You can. I'm going to be doing it, kind of sitting in virtually to watch the city council meeting.
Good.
And that is available. I was trying to just pull up the link. I'll try to find it. In the meantime, Jonathan.
Yeah, I know my personal feelings on ICE, but I'm wondering, just in the interest of our tradition, if we of consent, so general consent, if Mark needs to vote to have an official opinion on ICE, so that we can move or not move, I guess, depending on how that vote goes.
Yeah, thank you for that. The point of process. I think that, right now we're not trying to make any official motion or proposal, but just kind of getting that information out along the lines that Ariel and Andrew are proposing. But yeah, I think as this year progresses and we have our immigration committee, I think that those sorts of kind of more formal statements, we definitely will want to put those together, and we'll vote on them or kind of create consensus on them in the way that we do as Mark. So stay tuned. Tyrone.
Yes, I was hearing a commentary on ICE, and I would just say that the perception is ICE is cold, as in not warm, and there needs to be more human sensitivity. And I think, some people may say it's very, very appropriately named, but I think that's the perception of many.
Any other comments, Danny?
That's it for me.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for being here today. It was a very good meeting. And I think my last statement will be what it always is. And Ramona has been tag teaming with me today, which is everyone can do something. And everyone has enough time to do at least something small. That is the way the change is made, is by many individuals taking small steps to say, this is how I want the world. I am looking forward to seeing everyone at annual meeting on February 17th. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all. See you
Love
soon.
you, and nothing you can do about it.
Love you too.
Mm-hmm.